Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hey, everybody. Hi, and welcome to the Behavioral Corner. My name is Steve Martirano, and spring is, right around the corner. So hanging on the corner will get easier. It's been very cold on the Behavioral Corner. But I think we're setting the clocks back one of these weekends real cool, or forward, or whatever we do. So yeah, spring's coming, and they're playing baseball somewhere in the world where it's not snowing. So we're all up and happy here on the corner, even though we talk about very serious stuff. The whole shooting match, of course, I hope you know by now, underwritten by our great partners, Retreat Behavioral Health, about which more a little bit later. We always run into great people. That's why we like to hang on a busy corner. People come in and out, and they're fascinating folks. We sort of, pigeonhole, or what is the word? Buttonhole them and make them hang around and talk to us a little bit. Our guest today joins us for a number of really exciting and valuable reasons. She is herself in long-term recovery. We'll find out about that. As a result of that, her life is now more or less dedicated to passionate advocacy for recovery and recovery treatment centers. And naturally, being a woman, she has a particular interest in women in that context, not least of which our guest is with us because of her name, which is one of the great names I've ever heard. So say hello to Nikki Soda. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me be on the show. I sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah. Has that always been your last name, Soda? Is that? No.
It hasn't, but I have to say my maiden name is Stock, and which I think is equally.
Yeah, that's good.
Soda, but
yes. Yeah, but Soda's very cool. Everybody that I tell I'm interviewing someone named Nikki Soda, they go, "Is she in a rock band?" What?
So we named our daughter Harper Soda because we just feel like that's the name is setting her up for greatness.
Show business looms large. Nikki is the director of business development and marketing for an organization called the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. It's an important job. She probably is a foremost expert in those facilities and what they do, and what you should be aware of that they do when choosing a treatment center, all of which she's going to share with us on the corner today. So Nikki, let's begin with your story. 17 years, you told me before we went on the air, 17 years in recovery. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's almost 17. So my sobriety date is April 4th, 2004. So yeah. 17 years right around the corner. And I'd be happy to share a little bit about how it was, what it was like, and what it's like now, if you'd like.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really don't have a very unique story, so to speak. I'm from Missouri, raised in a middle-class family. Neither of my parents are alcoholics, and there's no abuse in my family either. And so it's one of those things that kind of, when I share my story, sometimes people think, oh, how the heck are you here? And I firmly believe that this is a genetic disease, and it skipped a generation for me. The first time that I drank, I blacked out. I am an athlete, and so sports is a huge part of my story. I played very competitive basketball. I went to state 3 out of 4 years in high school, and it was with my basketball team that I first drank, and we were a very straight-laced team. I had to transfer schools, and the first time that I drank, I didn't know what to drink, and the point guard who was next to me said, "I want to drink vodka," and I said, I'll do the same just to fit in, and ended up blacking out my first time that I drank. But what happened the next morning is when I woke up with the girls they said, "Nikki, you were so much fun." And I didn't remember anything, but I felt cool, I felt popular, and I fit in. And so
this is high school, Nikki?
This is high school. Yeah.
You know what? It's taken me 10 years ago when I started doing these programs. I'm not in recovery myself. I only mention that because among the many things I've learned is that phrase blackout drinking doesn't mean unconscious and you fall down in the street. It means you just have no remembrance of what went on during the drinking. What's interesting about your story, although it's not the first time I've heard it, is the immediacy with which that happened to you. Did it scare you?
No, it didn't. It didn't scare me. Yeah, that's crazy, right? But it didn't.
No, it made you sound. It made you sound. I'm guessing it makes you sound colorful. Wow, Nikki, you were so whacked, and you'd go, I guess. How about me? Right?
Right. No, that's exactly right. And what I found out too after that is that I had a very, very high tolerance. I could drink with the football boys, and that continued through my drinking career. I went on to play college basketball, and what had started as just drinking during the off season only, once I got into college, carried over to, I was very regimented, and I got up every morning for 8 o'clock classes, never missed early morning classes, had practices, and then once I got home after study hall, would start drinking. And what drinking did for me is it made me feel pretty, it made me feel cool, and it made me feel like I could fit into any situation. Where I'm 6 foot tall, and so I have insecurities walking in the room being the tallest person, and drinking made me feel like I could blend in more. And so it got to a point through my college career where drinking, and I started doing drugs too, because drinking wasn't enough, that's all I wanted to do, was to party. I didn't want to play ball anymore or focus on school. And so I took a year break, much to my parents' dismay. I did have a full ride, and I moved to Florida when I was 21. And what I found is that I was putting myself in very scary situations, and my drinking and drugging was consuming my life. And I did it every day. And it got to a point where my dad said, I can't talk or support you anymore. And my mom did the same. And so I was faced with making a decision. And I went back to school, and I did graduate from college in 2002, but I was very much a functioning alcoholic. And what I did, Steve, is I was able to skirt away from a number of consequences, but I was miserable on the inside. So I'd wake up in the morning, and by this time I'm 22. I'd wake up in the morning, and I'd have this pit in my stomach of like, what did I do last night? I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to stop. And so I'd be holding the steering wheel, driving to work or wherever I was going in the morning, and I would say, I'm not going to do this again. And sure enough, come 4:30, 5 o'clock, when I start getting the invites for happy hour, I just couldn't turn it down. And I have never, in my 7 years of drinking, just had one drink. And so I would justify my drinking by saying, well, I never drink alone. I'm always with people. I would try switching it up. Well, okay, tequila makes me crazy. I'm just gonna drink beer, and none of those things worked. And so what it came to is it came to me going to my boss and at work saying I have a problem. And what he told me is, he said, Nikki, you drink the same as I do. You don't have a problem. And he's like, I don't know what you should do. Go to HR. So I went to HR. That's how desperate I became. And HR's like, here's a EAP pamphlet. Why don't you go home and figure it out? And that began the trajectory of my journey, though. I went and found a counselor, and then was diverted to a residential treatment center in Tampa, where I checked myself in on April 14th, 2004.
Yeah. There's so many things in there I'd like to focus on. First of all, you mentioned your family background. Yeah. I think, hopefully, we're past the point of time when people think that substance abuse is some kind of class issue.
Right.
I mean, if the opioid crisis had any upside, it opened our eyes to how indiscriminate substance abuse problems are. They anywhere, family backgrounds don't matter, economic conditions don't matter. This thing can strike anybody at any time. So, I've heard. I always say that stories of substance abuse and recovery are the same, except they're different.
Right.
And we're getting that again to now. You're also an elite athlete. I mean, and I'm wondering on two levels. Uh, in the male context of elite athletes, there's a lot of pressure on who's the toughest guy, who can go hard, who can do all that stuff. Is it the same thing with women? Do women put that much pressure on each other to both conform and live up to the group ethic?
Absolutely. So playing basketball too, I was a forward. And so there was a lot of pressure to be tough and be rough but also to be a high performer. And
And drinking was part of that tough thing, right?
oh yeah, for sure.
Hang with the girls, right?
Keg stands, I can
Yeah.
I can outdrink anyone. And I have I'm an extremely competitive person, and I'm also a perfectionist. And those two things combined with alcoholism is
Boom.
boom, is right.
Well, you know what? I say that I don't want to scare anybody, but lots of people, particularly young women, I think, or the parents of young women, and men too, of course, think, you know what? There's too many dangers out there. I'll direct them towards athletics, and that'll be an outlet for them, and they'll have their own group, and they won't be hanging with the druggies, and there's some danger there. You can't let your guard down because your kid's a hotshot athlete. There's a lot of dangers in there.
No, for sure there is. And again, not to alarm any listeners, but there is an equal amount of dangers with over performance, or with that perfectionism that comes in to make you want to have to be perfect and perform all the
Yeah.
time.
Before we get to what happened in rehab for you, the final thing in that description of yours was the fact that you were high functioning. High functioning substance abusers have a double curse in that they go longer and harder and deny that to themselves that there's anything wrong, and no one else seems to think there's anything wrong. Well, look at her. She's here, does her job, right?
Right, that's exactly right. And with basketball too. And I remember my coach telling me one time, like, Nikki, you could be so much better, because I think he had an idea that I was partying a little more than I should. And so, but I never missed class. I never missed practice. And so that's part of it. Like, yes, I was out till 3 a.m., but here I am. So
yeah, people with substance abuse problems don't need to scapegoat other people. That's for sure. The only way you're going to get, as you know, the only way you get sober is you take responsibility for it. But in the context you just described, I often wonder, male or female athletes, whether or not some coaches, and they may be the greatest people in the world and well-intended, turn a blind eye to some of this stuff, because after all, if she's playing, why rock the boat?
yes, that's exactly correct. And I can only remember one time where I got pulled aside and saying, I think that there might be an issue from him. But you're exactly right. And you see it, I played at a medium level. At the high level, it's a whole different world.
Sure it is. Did you ever play while you were drinking, while you were?
No, I didn't. But I say that, but if we had a Saturday game, there's no way that I wasn't still hungover from
Friday. Yeah. So you get yourself into that residential facility. How did it go for you? Did it take, as it were, in that first visit?
It did. So there's a couple of things. First, when I got there, I sat outside on a bench. And I thought to myself, I sat outside for 2 hours, and I thought, my life is over. I was 23, getting ready to turn 24. I had my birthday in treatment. And I thought, I'm not going to be any fun anymore. No one is going to want to hang out with me. My life is over. But that hole that I mentioned before was so freaking big that I was like, F it. I'm going to give this a try, because anything has got to be better than I'm feeling right now. And I had no idea what treatment even looked like. I was having dreams about being in a white padded room the night before I went in. And little did I know that was completely wrong. So when I stepped inside, Steve, I was fortunate enough to have a counselor who, told me a lot of the cliche things, but in a really kind, loving way, like, Nikki, let's just take this 1 hour at a time. Let's take this one day at a time. I went to treatment for 28 days. I found a sponsor who relapse was not a part of her story. I am an active member of a 12-step program in AA. And so I found a sponsor who had 18 years continuous sobriety. And what I did is I found these women's meetings with women that had long-term sobriety and surrounded myself with them early in recovery. Because to me, I was so scared about what would happen if I took another drink, that I was willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, that's really, there's no key to sobriety getting there, but there are some sort of touchstones that people have to hit. And one of those is this: if you can hold on to the idea of, if I drink or do drugs another time, it's going to be a problem. No matter how much I want to, it'll be a problem. Hold on to that, get you through that day. Maybe you'll do better the next day. I certainly recognize that. Do you think that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I did want to say this. This comes to the competitor in me. So I'm sitting in a group room, and there's 41 people that are 41 patients that are there. And I'm at a co-ed treatment center. And the counselor says, of the 41 of you that are here, only 2 of you are going to make it. And I swear to God, in my head, I was like, well, I'm going to be one of those 2 people. Like, there's no question about that. And I remember that clear as day.
Yeah, that was my next question. To what extent did your athletic, the DNA in your body, the athletic DNA, say, I can do this?
Oh, absolutely. So not only did I say that, but I was about, I would say, 40 pounds overweight. In my mind too, I'm like, not only am I going to kick this, I'm gonna start getting healthy again. And so the competitor in me was like, all right, let's go.
You're very fortunate that a bunch of important things came together in your head simultaneously. Some people in recovery don't find out about getting themselves healthy till much later in the process, because they're so concerned about never drinking or doing drugs again. It's important to keep everything in mind. So in the you did what, 28 days, and that was 17 years ago. Relapse? Any history of relapse?
No, I mean, not yet. And by the grace of God, there won't be, because I have this, they call it the tape, right? So I have this tape in my head that says, Nikki, you've never drank just once. So when that voice starts chipping in, like, so Miller Lite was my drink of choice, a classy lady. And when
a cheap date.
Well, except I could drink a case and a half. When the tape starts playing, like, Nikki, you have enough time now. You can have one Miller Lite. What my tape, that's so important, starts playing is, yeah, but if you have a Miller Lite, then you're going to have 10 more, and then you're going to start looking for drugs. And that's a big part of what keeps me sober, is that.
Well, that tape metaphor I've heard is great, because the term I am familiar with is called euphoric recall. And that's when substance abusers sit around and talk about, oh, I'll tell you about a time when, and the really sharp counselors listen. And then when the person stops, they go, no, you didn't finish the tape. Finish the story. Well, you remember when you wound up in jail or the car accident, or, right? So that tape is there.
Yep.
It's interesting that the memory of what this stuff was doing to you
should
be winds up a tool, something you can use.
Well, and I encourage, when I sponsor women, I encourage them at the beginning to write down how they're feeling, because it's so easy with time to forget. It's so easy. And so for me, it worked. And so I encourage my sponsees, when I have them, write down how you're feeling right now, because in 6 months, we're going to need to look back when you start thinking, oh, it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Well, a remarkable story for a number of reasons, not least of which is that you're one of those people who it clicks for right away. You brought a lot of skills that made that possible. But as well as I, it's a crapshoot when people go into treatment. So I've talked to people who've been in and out of treatment many, many times. The trick is to keep going. So it's an interesting story, all of which makes you pivot, because I know you didn't start out as a young person wanting to become an advocate for substance abuse facilities. So tell me about that turn towards your career.
Sure. So, my background once I got sober, was in corporate and nonprofit meeting planning, and so I did a tremendous amount of traveling and doing logistics, and all the meantime, participating in a 12-step program. And my husband is a therapist, and I was getting very envious of him being able to be around recovery all the time, and so I started volunteering with different places and in recovery events. And then I found out that you could do this for a living, which I had no idea. And so where the advocacy part though comes in is I'm an active member of Junior League. And so about the same time that I got into the behavioral health field, I also became a member of Junior League, which is a women's organization that promotes volunteerism. And that is where the advocacy part started, where we had a lobbyist and I started learning about the legislative process and public policy. And the really cool thing is at this time, I start working for a wonderful treatment center in Colorado. And I start blending the two and learning about how I can utilize these skills that I'm getting at Junior League through public policy to advocate for behavioral health issues that are going on. So then it becomes a trifecta, right? I have this corporate meeting planning experience, this public policy experience, passion, and experience with recovery in the behavioral health field. And so I really start looking for ways that I can be of help with creating positive change. And that really is kind of my motto right now is, how can I create positive change? And so there's a number of different exciting ways that I've been working on that, but that's really how it started.
Yeah, we're talking to Nikki Soda. Nikki is Director of Business Development and Marketing for the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. She's with us because, well, we love her name, we told you, but she's such a wealth of information and experience in this regard. It's also a Women's History Month. I know that the 8th of March, Nikki will be on the corner with us probably right after that, but how did this focus on women in this area come about? I know you were telling me about a joint congressional action that took place.
So I didn't realize this, but Women's History Month has its origins as a national celebration that started in 1981 when Congress passed a joint resolution saying that whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background helped form the nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and they should be recognized. And so that really is where it started back in 1981. And then from them, it has just progressed. And so this started, as I said, in 1981. And then we've had Women's History Week, and then it's just moved up and up to now it's Women's History Month. And different proclamations happen throughout the country, and they celebrate the contributions of women of what women have done in the United States, and they recognize specific achievements that women have made over the course of American history. So it's just to celebrate women.
It's extraordinary about the women, whatever progress women make, and there's been a lot of it in my lifetime, is such a relatively short period of time when you think about it. I mean, the Equal Rights Amendment was was the 70s. Right. The women didn't get the vote until the 20th century. I mean, so there's been a lot of movement and focus in a very short period of time. And it shouldn't surprise anybody that among the things that women's progress has focused on is obviously their behavioral, their mental, their physical health. And it's good to see all of that happening as well. Let's catch our breath here for a second on the corner, maybe go over to the bodega and get an orange soda. And when we come back, I want to talk to you about what you've observed in the facilities that might present hurdles for women that are unique to their circumstance, being women and trying to get sober. Nikki Soda, our guest. We're on the corner, the behavioral corner. Stick around.
Every storm runs out of rain, according to the great Maya Angelou. Her words can remind us of one very simple truth, that storms do cross our paths, but they don't last forever. So the question remains, how do we ride out this storm of COVID-19 and all the other storms life may throw our way? Where do we turn when issues such as mental health or substance abuse begin to deeply affect our lives? Look to Retreat Behavioral Health. With a team of industry-leading experts, they work tirelessly to provide a compassionate, holistic, and affordable treatment. Call to learn more today. 855-802-6600. Retreat Behavioral Health, where healing happens.
So, Nikki, let me ask you right off the bat. I read somewhere last night doing some reading that women, I don't know if it's true or not, but I read it. Are women less likely to seek help than men? I read that and I thought, why is that?
There's a number of reasons, and what you read is true. One of the main ones is that women are the primary caregiver. And so whether it's for their parents, their older parents, or their children, majority of the time, the women are carrying that. And so they use that as a reason why they can't leave for treatment. So that's number one. And number two, so we'll leave it at that. That's the number one reason. And when I did admissions for a number of years, that's always what I would hear. Well, I can't leave. Who's going to cook? Who's going to clean? Who's going to take care of everybody?
Yeah, it's a manifestation of the old expression that when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And mama is most aware of that, right? Things I got to keep it together here, right? So they don't get help. And that, I guess, leads to the other phenomenon. I think I don't know that it's unique to women, but I think it's more prevalent, and that is this hiding of their drinking. Women are real secret drinkers, aren't they?
There's men that are secret drinkers too, but the statistics show that women are much more apt to drink at home alone. Particularly the ones that have small children and they want to hide it.
Yeah.
So, but also what you see a lot and I hear a lot in meetings, Steve, is that middle-aged women who are addicted to pills. And so that too is something that's really kept in secrecy. So it's not a social activity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know what else it strikes me as an unfortunate form of female sexism. And by that, I mean, it's in a sense understandable that a man should be behaving like this. That's, alcoholism and drug abuse is kind of a manly behavior, but it's certainly nothing a woman should be involved in. So women have internalized that, right? Whether they're working consciously like that. But that's what, I can't act like this. It's not ladylike.
Yeah. And, even as what's the word I'm looking for? Unfortunately, that old school thinking is still applies. Mm-hmm. And so yes, there's so much usage that is hidden. And I think that too is a barrier to why women don't get more help, is like, well, this shouldn't be my problem.
It's not something that, right. I'm not that kind of woman. Why would I? It's funny because again, when you compare this disease, which is what it is, to other diseases, if you did that thinking with cancer or something, it'd sound ridiculous. So your job is to advocate for and visit many, many facilities around the country. When someone, and in this case, women, when a woman says, as you did many years ago, I got to get into a facility, most of the time they have no idea what that means. You can make a phone call, but you have no idea what's on the other end. What, in your experience, what are a couple of the things women should know ahead of time and the kinds of questions they should ask when they're looking for a facility?
Sure, that's an excellent question. And so one of the things that I would look at first is geographically where they are. So although it shouldn't be a barrier, if they are in, let's say, if they're in California, perhaps looking at a place in New York isn't feasible due to what the family structure is. But that being said, sometimes it's best that they get as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Where their family dynamic is. So one of the things we look at is location. The other thing that we look at, Steve, is that we would want to look at is, are there any other issues? Is there mental health issues that really need to be looked at too? Because that's one of the things which is more prevalent, is the mental illness causing the substance abuse or vice versa. And so taking a look at that to see which treatment center is best dual diagnosis to be able to treat that. Another thing that's very high in women is eating disorders. And so if there's an eating disorder that's present too, does that need to be looked at? And then another thing that I feel is important is is it a women's only facility? If it is co-ed, how separated are the male and the female patients? And I look at it as a woman in recovery, how important it was for me to have that strong female network. I went to a co-ed facility and it worked for me. There's some women that need to be at a female only. And also the last one that I'll look at, there's treatment centers that allow children to be there with them. And so is that a prerequisite? And if so, here's a couple of really good treatment centers that will allow you to have your little ones with you.
Oh, that's a great tip, because I would have, I frankly I was not aware of that. Let me ask you about this co-ed thing.
Yeah.
A lot of, whether it's your family physician or a treatment facility, men sort of like to go to a male doctor, women like to go to a female physician. So it's not a question of one is better than the other, but in a co-ed situation, there's an additional, I guess, danger, and that is that relationships can form in a therapeutic setting, and that can be scary, right?
Yeah, for sure it can. And so there's two parts to that. Yes, the relationship is definitely something or starting a relationship is definitely something to keep an eye out. And so that's why there are some really, really good co-ed treatment centers, the Retreat, the treatment center that I went to. And then there's some not so good co-ed where they just let everybody mingle. And the chances of a hookup early on become great if there isn't proper guidance that's set up. So that's something most certainly to take a look at and be cognizant of. You're also going to have women who, there's a large amount of women who struggle with substance use disorder that have had some type of sexual trauma. And so it's going to be very important that they feel safe, because you can't get well unless you feel safe. And so that's going to be something else to look at too. And then as far as the female male therapist, I had a male therapist and he is exactly what I needed. And so I think for that, it's just very dependent on the person. But you bring up some good points.
Were your coaches in college or high school, men or women?
Both. I had a mixture. Yeah.
Yeah. What about pregnancy and recovery and treatment? Is enough being done? There must be a boatload of questions a pregnant woman needs to know before she picks a facility.
There is, and I believe the Retreat has done a really good job of doing some prenatal. They offer services for women that are pregnant. There is absolutely not enough treatment centers and resources for pregnant women. I cannot say that enough. We're just getting one here in Palm Beach County. I live down in South Florida, and there is such a huge need for that. It's really, really sad that the lack of resources. So there's a facility in California called New Directions for Women that takes not only pregnant women, but allows them to give birth. And then they have a daycare on center.
Wow.
But they are one of the few. And it's very unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, do most facilities feel that the problem of substance abuse and co-occurring mental health issues is so daunting that they would just, as a practical matter, not deal with pregnancy in the middle of all that, and so it's overlooked?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of cost, honestly, because I think that it's a very large liability, and they just don't want to put up the money for it. Don't feel that the return is on it, even though it's. If I were to win the lottery, that is where I would give my money to pregnant women in need of treatment.
Yeah. Nikki Soda, our guest, she is Director of Business Development and Marketing in the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. Nikki, it's been an eye-opener here. It's an interesting field that you're in. As somebody who visits these places all over the country, I guess. I don't want to put you on the spot here now, but as an industry, you've mentioned pregnancy being an area where they should get up to speed. What other areas do you think the industry has to step up and do a better job of?
Sure. I think that providing substance use treatment or substance use disorder treatment for the indigenous population, there is so many people who don't have insurance and that don't have the means for good treatment. And so I do get to visit treatment centers all over the country that have wonderful resources and provide wonderful treatment for a cost, right? And
Hmm.
so if I could wave a magic wand, it would be that some of these wonderful facilities that we have out there, both for profit and not for profit, offered more scholarships to people
Yeah.
who don't have the means. That's really one of the biggest gaps that I see.
Yeah. Well, if we live long enough, maybe we'll see universal health care in all kinds of fields, which would be wonderful. Thanks so much for your time. It's nice to meet you. And we hope you can, you come back next time. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Do you still go out in the yard and shoot hoops or what?
I do. So I'm currently the director of the JTAA, which is Jupiter to Quest Athletic Association. And so I coach my daughter, who is a heck of a baller. I not only coach, but I'm now the director of the youth league.
Well, that's great. I got to say something. I don't mean to embarrass you, but I mean this sincerely. I'm thinking about going and get a couple of T-shirts made up that say Nikki Soda, and I'm just going to wear them. And when people go, what is that? I'll go, it's just a name. It's a friend of mine. That's what. You know what? It's great. You're great. Keep up the good work that you do as a career, and 17 years of successful sobriety is, it's a credit to you. It's a testament to your hard work. Thanks so much, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.